Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. This week, I'm joined by prolific hand letterer Ian Barnard, our American retro design enthusiast Dustin Lee, and incredibly talented South African illustrator Lisa Glans. In this week's episode, we answer a popular listener question: what would we do now to get a new freelance business off the ground? This is something all four of us have lived through, and today we give our honest blueprints for what we would do if we were starting from scratch again today. You'll see how we stick with what worked for us when we first got started, but combine this with the experience we've gained in the years since. Let's get into the show. So we've had a few listeners asking about this in terms of what would our advice be if you're just starting out as a freelancer or trying to make your way as a designer. And I kind of wanted to come at this from two angles in terms of what we actually did, which has kind of worked out for us, versus what we would do differently if we were back to square one today. Like, what would the first things that we would do be? So I don't know if you guys want to take this one.
Well, as you guys know from my story, the way I started freelancing was, well, finding clients at least, was literally picking up the yellow pages and flipping it to a section that I knew they would need design services, like events companies or PR companies, that kind of thing. And I literally just cold called them and said, told them I was a designer, I'd love to show them my portfolio, and basically try to get my foot in the door. And it took a while, well, quite a good couple of phone calls before I actually got, a bite. And then I literally...
How long did that take in terms of time? Were you doing it for weeks or days? Or what?
Look, well, maybe I should backtrack a bit, because I was doing... I didn't actually just quit my, well-paying art director's job, which was pretty scary. I literally started working half day for somebody else first, because I couldn't take the plunge entirely. I was too scared. I couldn't just leave a job and then going to nothing. So I took a half day job with another girl that had her own design studio and worked for her half day, and then the other half I basically slowly built my other, my freelance business. So over time, I would say it was like every week I'd phone somebody, because, I would say for a few months I was doing that. So it wasn't kind of like
So you had months of feeling uncomfortable, because to clarify for the listeners, you're not like some sales machine, like the Wolf of South Africa figure going on here. This doesn't come naturally to a lot of creatives, and I know it doesn't to you either.
No, it was horrible. It was my worst nightmare. But I just knew.
You did it for months.
Yeah, how else do you get clients? I mean, you got to. They're not going to come to you. And back, I don't know.
Ian's like, oh, but they do.
Yeah. Back then, this sounds like I'm a really old granny, but back then, social media wasn't like a thing, and you didn't, clients didn't find you via social media at all. It was, you had to. I sound like I'm
I guarantee
110.
we've got some millennial listeners being like, what on earth is the yellow pages?
Yeah.
And where can I find this website?
And social media didn't exist. What are you going on about?
You might be able to make a whole side business out of selling old yellow page books that are unavailable now for high prices, because people be like, where can I get a yellow page book?
Exactly.
They're antiques now.
Yeah.
This mythological thing.
What do they do with them?
Thing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's a bold move, though. I think that, like you're saying, that would be uncomfortable for a lot of people. What was your mindset where you're like, screw it, I'm just going to do this and then feel uncomfortable?
Exactly. I think what people have to kind of weigh up in their head, even though they have to go and do something really uncomfortable, like either cold calling or presenting their work to a room full of people, when that's like your worst nightmare, like it was for me. I think you got to always remember what is bigger than your fear. In other words, for me, my overriding desire was to have my own freelance business and to make it work and to really be free of needing anybody else to give me, like be free of working for a company. So that overrode my fear, and I constantly kind of kept myself in check in that regard. Like, the morning when I'd wake up and I wanted to throw up because I knew I had to go and present my work, I just kept thinking, like, this is one step closer to my own business. So that overrode the fear, and even though it was horrible doing it, I'm glad I did it because I learned so much about myself, and I also learned how to speak to people and sell what you're good at, even though you are shy in that way,
So you actually did feel like you felt every day as you were doing this stuff that you were making progress? Like you were never like, maybe none of this is working and I'm just wasting my time?
I definitely felt like I was getting somewhere, even if I wasn't necessarily getting work from that particular person that I went to go see. Some people would say, have you tried this? Or I have a friend that would be perfect for you, in this. So even though I didn't get anything from them necessarily, either I walked away with more information, or I walked away, one step braver, closer to being braver in presenting my work.
Yep.
And I think that's quite a good skill to have as a designer, because we generally suck at that. Well, I mean, I don't know, a lot of people suck at that. So
I think something worth noting is that picking up the phone and the face-to-face stuff is way more effective than if you emailed all those people.
Oh,
like you just wouldn't hear back.
Sure.
It's so much easier to delete an email. So even though we're in a different age now with social media, that should make it easier to connect and find people's contact details for sure. But I think the old school methods are still the most effective.
Definitely.
And I've forced myself to do this as well, and it is really uncomfortable and unnatural, but you get better at it over time, and there is no real substitute. And I think it's looking at what's effective. So you talked about honing in on the types of businesses that would be most likely to need design.
Yeah.
So that's like a big step. Like that, that's a compliment you could kind of gloss over. A comment you could gloss over. But that's really crucial, because some people might just go from A to Z. And
you're wasting your time.
Suddenly you're like 100 times more effective and focused than they are just from that one tweak. And then other people might send 5,000 emails and feel really disparaged, like, why haven't I heard back? Whereas you picked up the phone. So I think when you really like channel your efforts, and I don't want to go super like, marketing business nerdy here, but it's like a conversion rate game, right? So it's like, I'm gonna ring up 100 people. How many are gonna like want to talk to me, and how many of those can I sell my stuff to?
Yeah.
And that's uncomfortable for people who want to sit and create and make beautiful work. But you just have to be really smart. It's the same like if you're not trying to get clients, but you're trying to land a job. I've always been a big advocate for like go all in on 1 to 3 companies you really want to work for, as opposed to like going and handing out your CV to 5,000 different companies, where it feels really impersonal. So it's like you can go laser focused with this stuff, and you're going to see much better results than just like a blanket sweep of like, oh, I'm looking for work, but this isn't really like relevant to you.
Well, at the end of the day, like we hire people we like, and I think when I was starting, I was frustrated, and you would write to people and not hear back, and you were like, how do some people get in the fold? It was always like, how do some people become, just cut through the noise and get the job, and other people are just ignored, like I was being when I would send emails. And like I started to realize, I think as I've gotten older, and now like I'll have people that will want to partner with me, I realize I was like, what makes me respond to some people and not respond to others? And I noticed the difference was, if someone just sends you something that's like, hey, we should collaborate. Or if someone's just like, hey, like, I love your stuff, like, let's work on something together. Like that pretty much goes, like pretty much gets deleted, or
it's too generic.
Even if it's specific, it still does. Like I noticed the people I really end up collaborating with are either people I've met at a conference and have built a relationship with, even over 20 minutes or 30 minutes having a lunch together or walking to one of the events. People that have interacted with me on social media without asking for anything, and I kind of feel like I know them to some degree.
Yeah.
Because like at the end of the day, right, like all things being equal, like we work with people we know. And we feel like they'll deliver, and you trust them.
Yeah, we're still all humans. That's what it comes down to. right? No matter what happens with technology and all the rest of it, we're just humans connecting.
Yeah, and even if someone was like a little bit better, I would choose the person that was not quite as good if I felt like I trusted them more because of our relationship. Like, I'd rather have something in my pocket that's done than someone great that I don't know if they'll deliver.
Yeah.
So the big tip, I think, early on is just get out there and take the plunge and start selling yourself and selling your work. And I didn't quite like cold call people. I didn't go through the yellow pages like Lisa, but I did go around local businesses, and whether it was like connections of people I knew, so it might be like a local bar or somebody who worked in their bar, like their wife or something like that, or like a restaurant or whatever it was. And then you kind of get your toe in the door and start building up these small projects and clients. And then suddenly, if you do a good job, the referral thing kicks in, right? So their friend or their cousin asks them, like, I need a designer. Do you know anyone? It's like, oh, actually, I do. Like, this guy
Precisely.
did this for me. And you just need that little bit of traction to get the ball rolling. But it's not going to happen by magic. It's not a case of like build it and they will come.
Yeah.
Like you need to get yourself out there and start having those conversations.
Can I come
So
from...
true, because... sorry, I'll just throw this in real quick. Like, perfect example is with Lisa's. Lisa, like, you had given us a sneak peek at the new website you're about to launch.
Yeah.
And it looked fantastic, and you talked about how much you like the designer. And we all know you, and how, like Tom was saying, we all have a relationship with you. Like, we have our ups and downs, but we have a relationship with you. But at the end of the day, like, you know, it's like, well, send me, like, if Lisa gives the thumbs up, like, it's like she's good with me.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I come from a different point of view where I didn't go out and put myself out there, but I still got work?
You're going to make us all jealous.
No, because I like cancel out the past few years, because that's been different, because I've built. The thing is, with a lot of people have I've never had a business brain, so with the whole building an audience on Instagram was more of a something I fell into rather than a something I said, this is my focus, this is what I'm going to be doing, like Lisa was. It just so happened, and now I'm in a position where I'm sort of turning down work, but I want to go back to where I was a freelance for just doing general design for like 8 years, and in that time I got work because of it was mainly doing work and people seeing, like, for instance, I was doing a lot of web work and it was just my name at the bottom of a website that I'd done, and people seeing that site and then looking and contacting me.
Website by Ian.
Yeah, and it was always just doing work would get more work from it. And so whether that was a case of doing it for free for family and friends.
Okay, because I was going to ask you, how did you get the first few? You know, how did you start that ball rolling?
The first freelance jobs I got was actually, if you're coming from it from a different, because I came out of a full-time job into a part-time job, and I had 2 days which I was building up a freelance career, and one thing is, don't burn your bridges. So when you leave a company, make sure you leave well, because they cannot pass on work to you because they know who you are. One of the jobs they got in was one that was for a local restaurant, and they just wanted some flyers, and it was too expensive for them to get it done at the company it used to be at, and so they gave it to me, and then that became a regular client. Another way I got sort of regular work was within actually my part-time job. I did a website for my company, and then the company behind the website creation software said, do you want to work with us? And then I started getting regular work through them. So mine has been a lot of just doing work, and I get work back, if you get what I mean.
So yeah, that is definitely a great tip. The referral thing is not only like word of mouth from clients, but you can have the backlinks, you can have all of that stuff. And I think maybe a good way of looking at it is it's like building up a web, right, of where you can potentially reach people. And the more work you do and the more people you work with and websites you leave with a footer link and stuff, that they all are like potential little strands of that web that can reach people.
Yeah, because for me, phoning people up is not something I would do, and I've never done, and I really feel really uncomfortable doing that. And so for me, it was always the the word of mouth. So you do a good job for someone, they then recommend it to someone else. So it's something that's hard at first because you just have to build up a body of work that then can be referred to. And it just starts with your family, starts with your friends, and then that web builds out until you start getting local companies. And then those local companies might say, like that design, then they recommend back to you. And then you have a portfolio of work you can put online for it, projects, case studies, stuff like that. So it's, it is about connections with people. But it's for me, it was just about doing a good job. That job being good would recommend to others. Like what we keep mentioning for every episode, like a builder, you look at their previous work. You choose. So you don't just say, I know you've got to trust them, and sometimes it's that, but you also want to see, okay, have they done anyone I know's work for anyone else I know, or can I see if it's for like an extension or something? You want to see some other previous extension. So it's not only the trust thing; it's also that body of work as well. You need to sort of get a bit of both, really.
It's wild to think that, like, out on the web, there's some websites, some places that, like, down on the bottom say, like, created by Ian Bernard. Like nowadays, like with all the stuff you're doing now, it would be like an Easter egg to find them. Like, you'd be like, what?
I still do get requests, like randomly. There's a site that me and my friend set up ages and ages ago, and they're like, I really need a website, blah, 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 blah. A really long email. I was like, sorry, I don't do it anymore. So, yeah.
Although I feel like we're in demand though, and I don't mean the four of us, like super arrogant. I mean designers in general. People don't know. I don't know anyone where they're like, oh, I've got like my pick of designers. Like I know too many. I can't move for designers in my town. Like there just aren't that many. And so I get asked all the time, like, when people say, can I do work? And I say no, I always get asked, like, do you know anyone?
Do you know? Yeah, exactly.
Do you know anyone?
I get emails weekly about it.
Well, I kind of don't. That's the thing. Like, I need to really have a better answer because typically it will be a website and then do I know anyone? It's like, well, not really. It's like our creative director, Matt, does like these huge corporate sites, and that's not really suitable for like your average small business. And if I had like a go-to person, I mean, anyone listening, do let us know. I think a lot has to be said for just being that designer that people know, being that go-to figure in your community, because it's pretty unlikely you're not going to be like fending off dozens of other designers. When you make that name for yourself, you become the go-to recommendation pretty easily, unless you're doing a horrible job. Yeah. If you're there doing good work and over-delivering, it kind of happens.
Well, and that's exactly like your response to that is exactly the thing I remember, like when I was like looking for designers to do different things that I didn't do early on, like, for instance, I was doing design, but I couldn't do websites. You would go ask someone that did a great website and they'd be like, well, I did do this website, but I don't do them anymore. Don't really know who, or they'd send you to someone that was like, that'll be $50,000, please. And so like, that's literally part of the problem. And someone I think like who did it really well and made a really great living is Paul Jarvis. Maybe some of you guys are familiar with him. And he did websites for years and was extremely in demand, made a fantastic living doing it. And the way he did it was essentially he did a very specific type of website. It was not a trendy type. It was just his style and it was very clean. But every single week he would write a blog post. He had a very not markety email list where he would just send tips out about, like business and stuff like that. And just by consistently, I guess, being, like you were saying, Tom, like, as opposed to being hard to find, he was very easy to find because he was constantly just sharing useful information. Not come buy a website from me. He didn't even mention that. People would just
made a bit of a name for himself.
Yeah, he just helped people out. And like, so then when they thought of doing a website, they're like, oh, here's a guy that like is on top of it, that would be a great guy to do a website. And he charged a fair rate. You know, I think he was charging $5,000 to $10,000 for a site. And he made you a great website. And he didn't have to ask because he did such a great job of just talking about it to people.
I had something actually while it's fresh in my mind. I think a great business development opportunity for a lot of fledgling designers is find people who have complementary services but not directly competing services, and then basically recommend each other. So for example, like pretend the four of us are starting out right now. What I would do is we're all friends, we're all trying to make a living as designers. You know, Lisa, no one cares about her illustrations. I know that's hard to imagine, but she's just trying to get like this passion project off the ground. And Ian's doing a bit of lettering, but no one knows him. And Dustin, you're like really into retro design, but no one's ever heard of you. And I'm just trying to create websites. So what I would do, I'd pool our skills together, and I would just say, hey, like if I ever get, someone ask about illustrations, I'm going to recommend you, Lisa, as long as you promise to do the same thing if they need a website that you can't build for them.
Yeah.
Like that's such an easy way to get potential clients, and it doesn't cost you anything.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, even today, like I have some people where they've become, you know, customers or friends. And like one guy I'm just friends with because we play on PlayStation together. He's a designer, but we play PlayStation quite often together. Battlefield 1, if anyone's down for it. Friend request me. Anyways, we play, and like when something comes up where they need this, you know, this or that fits with what he's doing, I recommend him because he's great. And he recommends when people say, "How did you do this illustration?" He'll always recommend like the brushes that he uses from us. And he's generated so many sales for us by doing that. And I've apparently generated some work for him just by being like, "Hey, here's a guy that does this fantastically." So yeah, it can be even really loose, I think. Like, but yeah, it's amazing. I think, don't they say, haven't you heard this, Tom? Like word of mouth or recommendations from friends is like the highest converting way that people get new business.
Yeah, by far. And I think we talked about this with pricing already, but it lets you price higher as well because it's the opposite of old sales Lisa Glanz, like calling you up out the blue when you're having your dinner. It's very much like they're coming to you like warmed up. Like they couldn't be warmer and more receptive to what.
Exactly.
She's pretty sweet though. She would probably be very nice to hear from for dinner compared to most of the people.
I would. I'd politely interrupt your peas, your mashy peas.
Hello, would you like some illustrations, please?
Some cute rabbits.
I'd like to send you some bunnies. That was a horrible British accent.
English there.
Yeah, that sucked.
Okay, so another thing I would recommend, and this kind of fits into Dustin what you were saying about Paul Jarvis, is stand out by doing something of value that has nothing to do with pitching yourself. And for me, that was I was on a forum and I gave free consultations and like detailed advice to anyone struggling with their websites. And so after you do that like 200 times and help 200 people and want nothing in return, funny enough, you start getting jobs out of that, or they start referring you to people who can afford to pay you, or whatever it might be. It's just doing something kind of like bold and audacious like that is different and makes you stand out in people's head and think, oh, that guy kind of gave something. So
can I ask you a question about that?
Something back. Yeah, sure.
Because that sounds like a really great idea. So I'm curious how this works. Because if I went into a forum and someone said that, if they had a track record of like 30 or 40 behind them, like I suppose, like, and it was getting results, I would do it. But how in the beginning? Because if I saw you in a forum and you're like, I would love to do a consultation for your site, I'd kind of be like, well, why should I trust you to do a consultation? For all I know, you're going to take the wheel and drive my car off the road into the river. Like, I guess like when you were starting, like how did you get people to actually trust they should listen to you about a web consultation?
Okay, so yeah, that's a good point. I think one thing is identifying the right audience. So I actually did this in like a entrepreneurial kind of membership forum thing. And I tried something similar in a Photoshop forum, and everyone was like, "Screw you! Like, who do you think you are? Like, offering expertise." I was like, "Okay," like, and it got really misconstrued, and it makes you feel terrible because you're like, "I really didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to replicate like a nice thing I did in this other place.
Yeah.
So, for example, any of us or any designers listening, I wouldn't go and do this in a design forum because you're not trying to sell to designers. But you could absolutely go do it in like a gardening forum, do it in like a small business forum. And if you're in there and it's something as simple as like, hey guys, like I'm happy to like redesign your logo for free and give you comments on like the improvements, then if you wow enough people doing that, I guarantee when they're like, hey, you know, you did that amazing logo, well, we need some flyers now, or we need a website. And that's where you can kind of swoop in and ask. And
I've got to add to this because that is such a brilliant idea and like such an insightful answer, because it's true. Like if you go into like a Photoshop forum or web design forum, you're going to have a bunch of people telling you how like, oh, I looked at your sites and I would have done it this way, and you won't get any traction. But when you go somewhere where it's in demand, like you said, a gardening site or something, all of a sudden it's very in demand. And I had recently read, I think it was from, I'm going with butcher's name, James Altucher. I'm not sure. I apologize, James. I probably said your name wrong. Anyways, what he had said is, he said, if you're good at this, like, I'm going to use Ian as lettering because it's just easy to make the comparison, but I'll use myself. So like, let's say with Retro Supply, before I had that, I was doing retro design, right?
Forget Ian. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I use him all the time, and I don't know if he likes it or appreciates that. But so like when I started like with the Retro Supply or doing retro design, I was not the best. Like I was okay at it. Like I did pretty good at it. But when you mixed like doing retro design with like doing like creating resources, as opposed to trying to be like one of the best retro designers that just does retro design, I got two things that I was pretty good at. And when you combine them together, it was one thing that I did better than anybody because I mixed it. So like, for instance, with like Ian, to bring him back into it, like Ian, you know, he gets lettering, but then he's showing it. So like he's combining like social media savvy with his lettering. And I guess the point is you get two different things that are disparate, and you can that are not the same, and you can put them together and excel at that.
I'll give you an example of that.
Please, I feel like I gave horrible examples.
I really hope I've got the right. I really hope I've got the right person here. But I'm pretty sure Stephen from Vandelay Design, if you know him, I'm sure I remember on his portfolio site he was doing like exclusively church websites.
Yeah,
and so it could be something like that. It's like, if you start hitting up every church within like a 50-mile radius and you've done websites for 10 of them already and they all look great, you are going to build a name and you're going to get known in that industry. And then once that's saturated or you get bored or whatever, then you can sidestep into something similar. So it could be into like, you know, religious events or you know, whatever. Or if it's like for photographers, then you could sidestep into painters or something pretty easily. But it's just like carving out that name for yourself, and
it makes it easier as well. If you can, you know, if you could become because then you could say you specialize in
exactly.
You know, whether it's church website, whether it's like building websites, whether it's like you know, gardening websites. Like if you can specialize in that and be the best in that, because it goes back to this sort of niching thing. If you can do it really well, like you say, for a selection of them, then you go, if your name keeps propping up, because if it's someone looking for a church website, because there's so many churches in the, you know, for instance, the UK, you can then, your name will be on all those ones that look really good. And then if one church has got a rubbish website, looks at a church that's got a really nice one, then your name's going to keep popping up, and then that will generate a lot of income. You go, oh, we've seen your name on lots of these sites. Could you do one for us? Whereas
I can talk like, sorry, go ahead.
And I suppose, but the problem is, if you're doing it in all different sectors, then with that one person who's looking at the competition of theirs, they're only going to see your name once. Whereas if you're if you sort of narrow your field down to a selected few, then that will, you know, go in your favor, really.
Yeah. Like I was going to say, like, as a consumer of this, so like I need like I use Shopify as a selling platform, so I need like a Shopify designer. Now there's all sorts of website designers, and when I go into forums and be like, can anyone do stuff in Shopify, and then they'll say yeah, and you go look at their site and they do all sorts of websites, and I'm like, no, like it doesn't even enter as someone I'll consider. Like I want someone that will show me just Shopify sites and shows me that they are kicking butt at doing Shopify sites. And that makes me feel like, okay, I can feel good with this person. They know what they're doing. It's not like they're trying to guess their way around Shopify.
Yeah.
So like being a Shopify web designer is way better. Probably it's even better to be like, I'm a Shopify maker web designer. You're going to kill it. If you have a coffee website and you want to put it on Shopify, who are you going to go to?
Yep.
I suppose it's like looking at places where, or searching on the internet for places to think, okay, is there someone who literally specifically does Shopify templates or websites? It might be Wix. Is it Wix, the other big one, or it might be GoDaddy or One-on-One. Their builders, whatever that may be. I think it's looking at where there's a gap that there's not, and you become that guy rather than I'm looking at how my business has grown. It's been since I've been niching into certain area that it's grown it, and so and I know I have quite a few variety of styles, but if I look at some of the other letterers I look up to, and their lettering style has grown into something that you recognise, when someone for a magazine wants a cover in a particular style, they know, okay, I need to go to them because they do that style. And that's the same.
But you also got your thing, like you do different stuff, but I kind of think of you as like, oh, well, Ian's kind of like this experimental mad scientist type dude at doing lettering.
That's just the hair.
So that's your theme, right? When you're looking for someone that might surprise you with something really unique and different and experiment, like who are you going to go to but Ian?
Yeah, I was just thinking now, going along the same topic, is you can also focus on what's important in your area. For example, in Cape Town, everyone needs a wine label because there's massive wine industry. Yeah,
Nice.
So when I was a graphic designer full time, there were literally like 3 or 4 design companies that were known to do labels, wine labels.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were literally inundated with work because people would, as you said, you just go to the pro, you're not going to mess around with the little guy. So if you can maybe identify what's really good in your area, that would also be a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really smart actually. And we're talking local, I think, for a reason, because with the internet, it's very global and you can technically pick up clients anywhere. But I do think a lot what we're saying, it's easier face to face when you can get on the phone, go for lunch, go meet them at their business and discuss. Like, I think that is easier when you're starting out. And yeah, that's a great tip from Lisa. It's having the awareness of like, the demand for your services. And that can even be down to like who can afford it. So I'm not like, if we started today, I'm not going to be like, I'm going to have the ideal client that's a business going out of business. And I'm going to create like a killer going out of business sign for them. It's like, well, they probably are not going to want to shell out for design if that's the case.
Yeah, exactly.
But my client probably also wouldn't be like a huge corporation because I wouldn't have the experience. So it's trying to balance those. It's like, who can afford you? Who's out of reach? Who will actively be wanting, your kind of services? And something I would like to try actually to hopefully provide value for the listeners. Let's all have like a 1 to 2 minute pitch of what we would do if we were starting from today. Like, imagine we're just 4 friends who are starting design businesses today. What are we going to do in our first week? And I'm talking like literally a minute or 2, like bam, 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 like bullet pointed. Like, I don't know, Lisa, what would you do if you started today to put you on the spot?
Well, I think
like first thing onwards.
I think with the internet and blogging and all that kind of stuff really taking off, and Etsy shops, I mean, there's so many people who have Etsy shops that need like their banners designed and their logos designed and that kind of thing. I would definitely target them. I would even target like this. As I said, they mentioned before. There's so many blogging sites that actually offer services for people who want to start their own blog. So I'd approach that website and say, look, I'll give you a free kind of template, logo templates, banner, that kind of stuff for your website that you can give away to your clients if you mention me, in your website or whatever. Because then what's happening, she's targeting your clients for you. So hopefully when she sends out that freebie to her clients, your name's all over it. And then if they need anything in the future, they're going to get hold of you. So yeah, I would definitely
like-
small businesses. That would be my first approach for sure.
I like it. And so what you'd basically just get right in terms of like getting in touch with people. You'd do
Yeah,
that straight away.
I'd be
ahead of
doing the
anything
cold
else.
calling thing in a more
Just
sort of
over again.
internet kind of modern way, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. All right, so I'll jump in myself. I would not do any of the fancy work of like coming up with a brand name or like coming up with a fancy looking website or a business card. I
no.
think that's what so many people do. Like I wouldn't even set up like the legalities. I'd kind of try and earn some money and then worry about that once I've got the money. And I'm going to have the caveat here of imagine that we need to put food on the table and this thing matters. So we can't float around here. Like we have to get this thing off the ground. So I would do the same thing. Like I would come up with a big list of every local business within a certain radius. And then as horribly disorganized as I tend to be, I would get some kind of spreadsheet or something that basic and boring. And I would start color coding and refining based on the suitable ones. So I cut out all the ones that aren't suitable, like we said before, going laser focused. And I'd end up with a big list of businesses that could potentially be a good fit. And then, to be honest, I would probably go door to door and walk in and have that conversation with them. And I would literally go down, I'd have a little map with like crosses on it for each business. And I would go and pitch myself.
That is
And
radical.
have a little like laptop or iPad or something to show my work examples if needed. But
and a shot
that
of
would be
whiskey
my-
before you do it.
yeah, a bit of Dutch courage.
Yeah.
And I'm not
Xanax.
saying this like easily. Like I would hate this. This would feel deeply, deeply uncomfortable for me. But I think so many people do this. It's like, okay, so I just quit my job, or like I don't have a job and I want to be a freelancer. And then 2 months later, it's like, okay, well, I've got a stack of business cards that look great that I haven't given out. Or I've been
that
like
stuff doesn't matter.
pontificating about like my brand image and stuff. It's like, you don't have a brand yet. You don't have any clients. It's like, you got to go and find the clients and go through the discomfort of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would just be like number 1, 2, 3, and 4 on my list for week 1. Everything else can follow. Like once you got the money coming in and the clients coming in, that's where I'd like do bold moves on social media and like build up a following there and give out freebies. But that's a long game, like we've seen with Ian. That can take years to build up. I'm talking about putting money on the table now. Like
If I was gonna start, I would start. Well, first of all, I think it's brilliant to not think about branding. I've noticed a lot of people want to start with branding and making a logo and name of the shop, and really it makes no sense because you don't know who your ideal customer is yet, or you're just fighting an uphill battle trying to fit customers into your brand. So I think what I would do is I would make a list of the types of sites that I could make. Let's say if I was doing web design that I could excel at, or that I was interested in doing, and then I would go then I would go look at what types of websites focusing on that particular niche, like had like an active community, and I would have a site that I made for that, and then I would pitch blog posts to them where I just give tips on how to improve your current site, inexpensive ways to make sites. So I'm basically using other people's audiences as a distribution center to get information. I wouldn't even mention, like we talked about Paul Jarvis, I wouldn't mention myself or try to sell myself. I would just try to give advice to help them make more sales and whatever that niche is. And then I would just have a link at the bottom linking back to my site. And
so sorry, you
generate
would go on
leads.
other bloggers' sites and you'd guest blog essentially. You'd
I would-
write for them.
I would
and
guest
you'd
blog
give
on
out tips.
other people's sites that are related to a very specific business niche, like not on design sites, like you said, like on a gardening site or a landscaping site or a whatever site. And I'd give very relevant things that those people need that no one's answering for them. Maybe I'd do research through forums, like get into some forums on landscape and whatever, see what are the problems people are having with their sites. What could I write a post about that they would love?
So yeah, so you're basically the solution to a pain point. They got a
Right.
problem and you're the guy who's in there like, I can fix this.
Right. And that deals with the issue too that we were talking about of we buy from people that are recommended to us. So if they trust this site they're going to where there's a forum or where there's a lot of posts being put up by someone they trust, you're kind of transferring some of that trust. So they see you're on there and they click through. And like you said, it's like it's a conversion funnel. At the end, some people come out the other end saying, can you build me a site?
And can I put a caveat on this for the listeners? You never
Please.
want to be the guy to like go in the gardening forum and it to be paper thin obvious that you're just trying to tout business, because you'll get a bunch of gardeners in there trying to discuss geraniums, and
They'll
they'll
come
be
at
like,
you
"Who
with a
is this
fork."
guy?" Yeah, they seriously will. People can sense that stuff a mile off. Like if your intentions are good, Lisa's giggling there. Just a gardening fork wielded at you. So you know what I mean. If you're in there and you are like genuinely wanting nothing in the immediate term and just being really kind and helpful, and it would help like if you had an interest in gardening, so you're like one of their fellow people,
Absolutely.
but you just happen to do websites, so you're geeking out over gardening or whatever the forum's about, and it's like, oh, while I'm here, like I just redesigned your logo, I just helped you with this, I'm answering questions that you happen to have about that. That's more genuine. Whereas if you just drop in, you're like, hey guys, like loving the gardening chat, PS,
Exactly.
if you need a website or a logo, like that's the worst thing in the world.
Well, it's kind of like Reddit, right? Like you can't go into Reddit and just start saying, go buy my stuff. Like you have to go into Reddit and you have to contribute and have a genuine interest. And that will make people be like, what's up with this dude? Then they'll look you up and realize, oh, he does websites, whatever I need, and contact you. So it's almost like if you don't mention it, but you're just helpful in that specific area, they'll find you.
Yes, and it means you won't end up in the seventh circle of hell with spammers.
Exactly.
Which is always good. Cool. So, Ian, week 1. First of all, what's your business going to be called? Ian's inspiring masterpieces.
I don't know what it would be called, but what I would do first is so I'm going to presume a few things.
Okay.
One being you'd be on Facebook, and the reason for that is that you've got already off the start you've got a massive audience of like, for me, like I know I've got about 500, 600 friends on Facebook, and so I would create a page for my business. I would share it and just go, look, guys, just starting out, can you like this page? I'm available. Put yourself on there because it's going to be those friends and those acquaintances who's going to give you the first jobs. So
that's very smart.
You want to get on there and daily start creating stuff, posting out. But what you want to do in the first week, I think, is rather than just trying to crawl at little bits of money here and there, is do a load of research into what is your passion. You know, it can't just be graphic design. Something that I found that I really struggle with is just picking bits here and there. If you can just really narrow down what you don't like about design, which is something I came to terms with, and what you really love about design, and just make a list. Once you've nailed that down, then start producing made up works in that style, because you might not have any jobs to do, so you're trying to create a sort of a portfolio of stuff that's that customers can visualize. So hopefully you can then start, like I said, posting stuff in that style. So and I would make sure I have every single platform set up in my name, so Instagram, Twitter, might even do Snapchat, and I'd just get straight on top of it. So like daily posting content, maybe posting your process of stuff, just sketching, whatever you might be doing.
Do you feel like that's immediate enough? Because I think that's really wise words, to be honest, with getting it out like to your 500-600 contacts, because it's quite likely one of them might need work or know someone that will.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that gets the ball rolling.
So if you've got 500 people and they've all got contacts as well, you might get a couple of jobs, and that could be paying the bills, those couple of jobs. And while you're doing it, you're just straight away hammering out content every day as well. Posts of, because if you're producing, even just in a week, you did 7 posts. You did 7 days worth of Instagram stories showing you doing some sketching or you doing some designing. People straight away are going to say, oh, this guy's, you're providing value for people. You're providing some content for people. You're providing consistency for people. So as soon as you can start that ball rolling, you might not see any fruit by the end of the week, but I think you'll get that ball rolling and get into a good place. And you just keep pushing. At the beginning of Facebook stuff, connecting with people on other social platforms as well, commenting in other social platforms. Anything that, because then what it starts doing is just getting your stuff into the ecosphere of the internet, and then it might take a little bit of a while, but you've put in that groundwork and you've started a discipline in the first week. If you can do it in the first week, then you keep it up, So
I feel like I'm kind of seeing a pattern here where we are all advising, or if we did go back to square one, we would kind of do what we've all done, but just in a more focused, quicker way.
It wouldn't have taken me 14 years to get to it.
Yeah, exactly. Or at the very least, like what you've just described for a lot of us probably would have been like 6 months of faffing around and trial and error. Whereas now the fact we've done it, we'd kind of repeat it, but literally do it in a week or two and just be prolific from day one.
Well, and just to put a cap on this whole thing, whatever one of these you're doing, or if you're doing all of them, when something works, do more of it. And if it's not giving you any results, stop doing that and invest that extra time in the thing that is working.
It's hard to think with social media. It's hard to see immediate impact, and a lot of stuff I do, I'll never see how it impacts any of my stuff I do. But it's just that awareness. So,
your very long-term vision though with it, which I think is hard for a lot of people. That is bold. A lot of people think, well, my time's precious. I can't think about the big following I might have in 2 years. Like I need stuff now.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really good strategy.
I think
like I've got a lot of admiration, but it takes faith. Right?
Even in a world which everything's instant, you still have to play the long game with social media.
Yeah.
Whether that's posting, just building an audience takes time. Whether that's on YouTube, any of the platforms, it takes time. There's like one person in like a million who gets that instant success. People know who they are. Everyone else, it's the tortoise and the hare sort of thing. It's that long, and you keep doing it. But if you can put those things into place straight away, and then be doing, jobs coming through sort of friends and family at the start, then once those start to expand out, you've got all this platform as well you've been posting to, and so then you start not only to get stuff maybe locally that's getting a bit bigger, you get stuff from the other side of the world as well. So you want to have both a look on the sort of international as well as local. So, and I suppose that's what was different now than it was when I was starting out. It was just I had a website and that was it. That was Google. Someone typing in, if I was anywhere near the top, I'd get some inquiries, and I never really was, so I never really got inquiries for that. So it was that local, plus some websites I'd done and seeing my name at the bottom. So I think there's more.
Did you notice an interesting trend here? So, Tom, your question was if I had a week to do it.
Or what would you do in your first week?
What would you do in your first week? And if you look, the uncomfortability scale increases with how short your time is. So if you have a week and you can't give your baby like milk, like that means you need to print out yellow pages, take a chug of whiskey, and start walking around the neighborhoods asking for jobs. And it's extremely uncomfortable and brutal.
Yeah.
But your chances probably go through the roof of getting that initial job to get that paycheck. If you have a little more time, the long-term strategy is less uncomfortable, but might yield more stronger results over time. So it's interesting. The less time you have, the more uncomfortable. The more time you have, the easier, but it's a long drag.
But I also want to add that even though I did that horrible stuff in the beginning for those few months of cold calling, and once I had my client base sort of from that, I never, ever, ever had to do any, sort of promoting, any cold calling, anything ever again. So I did all that.
It grows from that.
Sorry? Say again?
It grows organically from that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
it's like a little spark.
Yeah, so you kind of like do all the horrible stuff. It's almost like a concentration of doing the yucky stuff in the beginning, and then you never have to do it again. Well, I mean, for me it was that way anyway. So yeah. But you have to concentrate on putting out really good work, because you only get referrals if you do good work. So that's important.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like we've covered quite a lot. There's just get out there, don't be precious, don't get hung up on all the fluffy stuff that won't get results. Get out there and start talking to potential clients because they're not going to come to you.
Yeah.
Leverage your
Don't be
networks.
afraid and do the uncomfortable stuff.
Yes.
As Ian says, if you can, definitely think long term because that will pay dividends later. Be prepared to do a lot of the ugly stuff early on because that will again pay dividends later. And then really there's a lot of stuff we can get into, I think, in upcoming episodes where it's slightly more into that long game of how you can stand out and take things to the next level. But the listener questions really were like, how do I get this started kind of thing. So for anyone who's like been at home refining their 14th draft of their business card, like I would seriously just get moving basically.
Just put it in.
That's the big thing, right? Like anyone who's making long business plans or fiddling around with business cards, like you've got to stop doing that. Like when my business finally started taking off, we were pregnant with our child and our little girl was on the way and I didn't have a choice. So I was throwing stuff out there like a madman and I didn't really care what anyone thought. And at the end of the day, it's really making stuff and putting it out.
If you're there with your wife being like, what do you think of this shade of green? She'd be throwing stuff at you probably.
No, you just become crazy and you just start throwing stuff out. And I've heard of it. And there's a guy that calls it the baby effect.
Yeah. Nice.
We've all been there though. We've been there trying to design our stuff. But
I thought you meant having babies. Not yet.
just put it in a caps sans serif on minimalist. Just go minimalist.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. We hope that it gave you some motivation if you're trying to get your freelance business off the ground, or some actionable tips if you're already established. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com or search for The Honest Designers Show over on iTunes. It would mean the world to us if you were able to leave us a quick rating or review over on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for other designers to discover the show. We also hope that you'll post your own freelancing experiences over on social media using #HonestDesigners, as Ian, Dustin, Lisa and myself would love to jump into that conversation and help you with your creative journey. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.